Hello and welcome to Rights and Recourse, a program that tackles legal issues, bring you information and analysis. My name is Dumila Matez. Remember, you can also be part of our discussion today by tweeting us at Rights and Recourse or calling our studio line on 011 714 5497 or 5498. Alternatively, you can email your thoughts about this program and many other programs that you would like us to air on Rights and Recourse at sabc.co.za. In a speech made at a function of the Jewish Board of Deputies in 2013, then Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Radebe, prefaced this problem by saying the following, and I quote, "Although as a country, South Africa has made enormous strides, particularly in eradicating formal inequalities and establishing flourishing democratic institutions, however, hate crimes have from time to time reared their ugly heads. The events of the last 2 weeks did very little to suggest that South Africa is a non-racial society." Today on Rights and Recourse, we examine the efficacy of existing legislation to deal with hate crimes and how can we as a people respond to this without losing our humanity.
I'm here at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to speak to the Honorable Minister Michael Masuta about violations, dangers and your rights when it comes to social media. Come with me. Minister, can you please tell us, do we have social media policies in South Africa, and what are those policies?
All law and all legality derives its authority from the Constitution first and foremost. And in that Constitution, there's a Bill of Rights that guarantee, amongst other things, certain rights with certain limits. And free speech is one of those rights. But that free speech is, in the very same Constitution, limited to the extent that it does not unfairly violate other people's rights.
In terms of the social media violations, what is prosecutable and what is not prosecutable?
You then have to look at the facts and apply them to the law to say, does this incident constitute a violation of any particular law? Now, examples would be that at common law, we have what we call crimen injuria, which is verbal assault of an individual. In other words, you're not using a knife or your hand to assault somebody, but you're using your words to assault somebody. Now, that person can lay a criminal charge against that assault, and you could be prosecuted criminally. There's also the law of defamation. If you damage a person's good name without good reason, and you do so unlawfully in that what you're saying about that person is actually not even correct factually, that person can sue you for spoiling their good name unjustifiably and recover damages from you for your actions.
What are the benefits that are linked with social media or being on social media, and what are the limits in terms of what you can say and not say on social media?
The benefits of social networks obviously would be that you get news in an instant, so you get to communicate not just with people in South Africa, like people in the rest of the continent of Africa.
Do you know your rights when it comes to social media?
I know that I can't be irresponsible on social media because it's a public platform, and those things can come back to me in my career, in my family as well.
What type of post would offend you on social media?
People who put other people down for no reason, who make fun of other people's misfortunes like unemployment, that offends me. And people who talk reckless about racism, those kind of things, they do get to me a bit.
I'm here at the Joburg exhibit to speak to one of the social media gurus, Radebe, about the dangers of social media. What are the limitations when it comes to what you can say about your employer or your organization? Can one post get me into trouble or get me fired at work?
The best thing is that never mention your work in social media. You can't write things such as I hate my job, I quit, because that some companies will accept that as a resignation, that you have actually quit on social media, and they will win the case in the courts of justice.
I really would urge all parties in society, whether in relation to politics or in social intercourse, to really act with restraint and be considerate towards each other whilst exercising this right. In other words, exercise your rights under the Constitution responsibly with due regard to the rights of others and the sensitivities of others.
Well, thank you very much, Tumbali, there. I think we are going to touch on all of the things, especially the Minister of Justice was talking about. Joining us in today's discussion, or today's topic, we are joined in the studio by the Honourable Deputy Minister of Telecommunications Postal Services, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, who is here in her capacity as a former member of the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We'd also like to welcome Ms. Sheniece Linderboom, Acting Executive Director of the Freedom of Expression Institute. And lastly, we are joined also by Bishop Malusi Mpulwana, who is the Secretary General of the South African Council of Churches. I normally sometimes don't know whether to say General Secretary or Secretary General. It's General Secretary. General Secretary. Sheniece, let me start with you. This whole issue around the postings on social media during the last 2 weeks, many people have labeled them hate speech. What constitutes hate speech?
I actually think internationally, so there isn't really a definition, and I think from the readings that you can look up, there isn't really a set definition of it. I think with our specific instruments of law, we are guided by the Equality Act, which sort of notes that it is going to be hurtful or harmful to the individual, and advocate for hatred. But it's a little bit complicated, because what is hurtful? Is it physical harm, or is it emotional harm? And then also just in terms of the characteristics that one would advocate hatred on, there are specific characteristics in the Constitution, and then those in the Equality Act are a little bit broader. So I think it is there is, in terms of the definition, I think we're hoping actually that it would be a little bit tightened up, but at the moment there is sort of guidelines, and the courts to date have been working sort of on a case-to-case basis, I think, in sort of trying to set the tone.
The other question, probably, Deputy Minister Osho, I want to ask is, are we quick to label anything that is said as racism, hate speech or hate crime without understanding the definition of the very act?
Not really. I don't think South Africans are intolerant. If you talk about hate speech, you have to take the context into consideration. For instance, if you go out in a country which was over years had a legislation which was racist, basically categorizing people in terms of race groups, and creating a system whereby if you are black or white, determining the school you'll go to, the hospital you'll go to, the church you go to. So you cannot be academic about it. You cannot wake up and say all blacks are like this, and then say, oh, in law it's not really clear. It's clear. You are talking to a group of people, the majority of the people in the country. So there's a context, and you are expressing hatred towards them as a group. So in that way, I would think people will be in denial if they don't react with shock in terms of saying, how dare the beneficiaries go back and say these kinds of things. So people are generally intolerant, understanding, building steadily on the values of non-racialism. But what I think happened over the last 2 weeks, shocked people and really angered people. So there was that context.
Is it right, Bishop, that people should speak openly about what they think about other people so that we can deal with these issues? Because we are not a hegemonic society.
Well, I think that, getting back to the context that the Minister raised, there is a huge history of context. And that history of context, part of it has to do with the fact that came 1994, we had this euphoria of freedom and non-racialism and togetherness. We dealt with political transformation, but we never dealt with what might be soft issues of attitudes, of how people actually relate to each other, and we just didn't. And this is coming home to us now. And the real issue is what are we going to do about it, and I think that's what we should do. This is simply just a symptom. It symbolizes what has been festering out there. This is not new. People have been living with these experiences. They're just that they've burst out into the open. We need to deal with it as a society.
Minister, are the events of the last few weeks an indication of some unfinished business on our road to reconciliation?
In a way, I will say yes, but also I want to say something. You know, the Minister of Justice made reference to the Constitution and the values enshrined in the Constitution. Before 1994, as the Bishop has said, we had the Freedom Charter. But there is no way in which post-1994, in democracy, we could start grappling and say these are freedoms we fought for. So this notion of freedom of expression, it's a right, but it goes with huge responsibilities because rights have got limits. And I think that we are missing a point in terms of understanding where we are today and where we should be going. And I think what has happened, it's important. It's a wake-up call that each and every person, especially beyond government and the legislation, because I don't think there are all sorts of pieces of legislation which really doesn't allow what has happened. We have other countries, we have other experiences of the genocides, Rwanda, the Holocaust, and so on. In democracy, it's a no-no to make people to revisit the pain of the past. What is unique with the apartheid experience? Why would we forget easily that there's pain that people are living with, emanating from many years of colonization and apartheid experiences? Do you think in the houses people don't to their children about why are they in shacks? Why are they as poor as they are? Having worked all, what happened to the land? What happened to this? So there's a problem, a fundamental problem in terms of having good legislation, good constitution, credible leaders at the level of Madiba and many others, but having a massive layer of society that is in denial. But unfortunately, in some instances, people really are holding back the country in terms of holding on to the wealth and using all sorts of privileges to ensure that they defend it at all costs.
Bishop, I quite like, in doing research for this topic, I read an article by Franny Repkin, a legal journalist of one of the newspapers, who says, the general thrust of the Constitution is permissive when it comes to speech. It envisages the kind of democracy that is noisy, in which people can speak their minds and demand their due. Is the Constitution a little bit too open-ended?
Actually, no, I don't think so. I think the Constitution has got, it sets limits. I think the Minister has already referred to the rights. There's also his responsibilities. I mean, one of the fundamental things that the Constitution is doing is to protect the dignity of the human person. And anytime you undermine another person's humanity, whether by race or any other manner, you are actually violating the Constitution. So it is a constitutional issue. So it's not just rights, it's also responsibilities. And I think that I'd like to just say two more things beyond that. first one is that I said earlier that we didn't deal with the soft issues of attitudes. But those attitudes are mounted on living realities, how people live their lives. Wealth, for example. Poverty in South Africa was created through a whole system of impoverished. And so you cannot have a reconciliation that does not deal with the economic transformation, because everything in South Africa has been racialized. Race was the instrument that was used to impoverish and to enrich. Race, therefore, becomes a core issue in dealing with the inequalities of our society, as well as to deal with, we need to have a reconciled economic dispensation. We need to have a situation that reconciles the aspirations of poor communities and families with the fortunes and possibilities of a country that has got a constitution such as we have. And that is exactly the reason why the platform of the South African Council of Churches for the South Africa we pray for is mounted on the issue of healing and reconciliation, and it deals with the issue of poverty and inequality and economic transformation.
We'll continue to talk about this. If you'd like to join us on today's discussion, please, you can call us on 011 704 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Rights and Recourse. Stay with us.
And I'm Prabhakshini Chetty Miller, SAB Miller, and House of Bush InBev. It's something that I need to learn to say more often.
Will together produce around a third of the world's beer.
It is a mouthful. Have you ever considered skin bleaching?
Nigeria tops the list of African countries with 77% of its women bleaching their skin. Now I can see that it is not good because it affects my face and some of my body parts.
Thousands of Arab Israelis and Palestinians participated in a big rally.
Flight MH17 was shot down by a Russian-made missile.
How those chips may fall is a prediction best left to the currency of time.
That's Primetime News, Africa Journal, and Your World on SABC News.
We kick off this week's show by seeing how Kenyans are paying tribute to the victims, as well as not only how they've coped, but how they returned stronger after the attacks.
Last year, images of the 4-day Westgate Mall attack saturated front pages.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, artists have assembled to celebrate the peace this war-torn country has not had in a long time.
No conflict that can't be solved without a conversation.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
We decided to come here today, individually and collectively, to come and lay a charge of criminal injuria and incitement to violence to a number of persons, not only to Penny Spyro. There are a number of other persons who have made similar statements in the past, which in our view, I think, are an incitement to violence in the country. South Africa has never been so racially polarized like it's been today or over the past few days. And I think it's important to take a stand, to unite against racism.
Well, no sooner, I want to pick up on that. No sooner I had this whole thing erupted, the Department of Justice said they are going to tighten up on the legislation around hate speech. But that is an indication that there is legislation to deal with this thing.
And I think on the basis of what we have been saying, the equality clause is entrenched in the Constitution. And in that way, there are all sorts of pieces of legislation which really can be utilized. But remember, there was a World Conference Against Racism in this country. So the Department of Justice still has a responsibility to ensure that they come up, tighten or put forward new pieces of legislation which will deal with the program of action, which all countries have to report on every 5 years, including civil society. The World Conference was held in this country mainly because the UN had declared what was happening in South Africa, the racism and the whole apartheid system as a crime against humanity, because people were discriminated and butchered and tortured as a grouping, as a social grouping. So we have to look at what interventions are in place, exactly like in the question of gender inequality. We have a relevant commission that is focusing on gender issues. When we started, we had desks at critical positions, gender mainstreaming, and we have the BE broad-based include gender aspects, but we, having come out of all those experiences in the past, we tend to be silent on race issues. So saying we're a non-racist society doesn't automatically eliminate racist practices, especially outside government. Like in the private sector, you have heard how people will say, in strategic sectors, there are no black people in the boards. At a senior level, black people are not represented. Even when they are there, another position will be created so that he remains in a vacuum. Real decisions are made on the side structure.
We create 2 chief executives.
Yeah, and take responsibility for the one who's supposed to be real, the chief executive, and so on.
Deputy Minister, let's take this call from Glenn on the line. Glenn, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Oh, thanks, how are you, Glenn?
I'm very good, thank you. I love everybody.
Hello. Yes, Glenn, what's your topic? What's your question?
Question. Well, I do spit prize for a living, and I've worked for Mr. Mandela. And when I saw the life of Mr. Mandela, buried in the name of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, he just told the country, forgive, love one another, do unto others as you want others to do. We're living in a country, this man is sitting with a cross on his chest. It mustn't make us cross, it must make us happy. So what I would suggest is, Mr. Zuma, my beautiful president, I must pray for him, must not talk bad about him, must respect him and give honor to the king. He said Jesus put us in power and Jesus will keep us in power. That's what Mr. Zuma said, my president. And we must pray for him. You're not perfect, I'm not perfect, and nobody's perfect. Sometimes we make mistakes. So we have to learn to forgive, like Bishop Tutu said. Truth and reconciliation. The best of us can slip with our tongue. It's got a poison on it. We have to learn to control it and renew our mind. So what I would suggest is, Mr. Jacob Zuma, my precious president, we must get a Muslim leader that's kind, not the jihad one that's getting the devil out of the tongue, out of the heart. Kindness, tenderness, forgiveness, mercy, and gentleness. And then we get a Jewish guy, and me, I love Jesus. I'm a Jewish guy. I love Jesus too much. So when I hear these things about these people in the water, my heart is very sore. So I have to pray. But my contribution, let's start a show on television where Mr. Zuma can open a case where you get all the top leaders of the main religions in South Africa to sit in a panel like this, and let's talk. Let's talk, like Bishop Tutu was talking for many years.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you very much. We've heard the gist of what you wanted to say. I want to go back to something quickly. Sheniece, are we tolerant of each other? Are we tolerant enough of each other? You know, are we paying attention to, are we playing by an excerpt from Voltaire once said, I only disagree with what you contend, but I will defend to the hilt your right to say it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something within our organization that we're always saying, is that we need to work for tolerance within the general society. I mean, freedom of expression, the benefits are, you know, in a democratic society are just, it's so critical for that, because we're speaking about human dignity and all the other rights, but to be able to say what you need to say to fight for all of those other rights within the Constitution, we think is just so important. And within our organization, we obviously understand that there's rights and responsibilities, and where there needs to be the responsible exercise of the rights itself. But I think we need to learn to be tolerant of other people's opinions and views. I think courts have said on several occasions that to shock and offend, there's nothing wrong with that in the exercise of freedom of expression. But where it crosses that line, then we need to understand as well that if someone takes offense to it, they've got actions and recourses available.
Let's take another call from Dagi from Beval. Dagi, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Thank you. I've got questions for your professor.
Go ahead,
and
Dagi.
for your preacher.
He's a bishop.
Okay.
He's not a
Oh, he's a preacher.
Yeah. So to the professor, I agree with her to a certain extent. Where yes, everybody's got rights, but those rights should be equally distributed. I mean, if you look at when this EFF started, they started this whole thing bringing the whites down and starting to accuse the whites of everything. And that's the start of this nonsense that we're experiencing now. And people are blowing the thing out of proportion because it's not being done in its proper context. The one for the preacher is that he, as a man of God or the man of a cloth with a cross on his chest, should be saying, listen, our laws should be governed by the Bible. The Bible should be the foundation for all our laws. And unless the Bible is that foundation, you can never find, no matter what you do in this country, it doesn't matter what you're going to do, unless you put the Bible as the foundation. You can have all the laws in the world, but you follow God's law, you will follow the truth. And the truth will set everybody free. And everybody's always talking about freedom and rights. There's no rights except if it comes out of the Bible.
Thank you very much, Dagi. Thank you very much, Dagi. Thank you very much. We picked up a gist of what you are trying to say. A little bit worried about me being governed by the Bible because that's very extreme. I've seen people governed by the Bible and I saw how extreme things happen in the Bible. An eye for an eye. Doesn't the Bible say so, Bishop?
Indeed, there are parts of the Bible that say that. I think that, I would like to actually say that if we're really serious about the Bible, of course, only Christians really believe in the Bible. Not everybody is a Christian, even though the majority of South Africans are Christian or claim to be. The core of the Christian gospel is to balance the Old Testament with the New Testament. Hence, your eye for an eye. But at the core of the message of the Bible, which I think he is referring to, is the message of Christ that says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, we can talk about legislation, we can talk about laws, we can talk about criminalization. All those things are necessary in an institutional way that we live our lives, that you must have some kind of rules and things that if you did this, there are consequences. But even those pieces of legislation will work better if we take the trouble to socialize appropriately. And I don't think that we're doing that. That's why I mentioned the issue of human dignity as really the centerpiece of our human rights legislation. But that human rights legislation on the dignity of the human person is so important. We see the flare up when it comes to race. And in fact, I was chuckling about this with other people in talking. We are so angry, and we rightly should be angry when Africans are called monkeys. But you know something? Many people refer to people with albinism as monkeys. And nobody says anything about the fact that it was in Gao. And so, where is the dignity of those people in that regard? We refer to people of other countries who are citizens, not at least even if they are visitors in our countries, because they speak a language that is non-South African, now, and we're not doing this in a very nice way, we're doing it in a way that actually puts them down. We refer to other people as Izlwane. And these would refer to people as Amakula, as Amakaya, Amalau. The question is, where is it that we should actually, I think we should deal with the issues of human rights and human dignity very comprehensively. And if we look at it as something that all of us have to change about, then maybe we've got a job to do. Maybe then, and just maybe, this whole thing that has just started might help us as a society to begin to think differently about ourselves.
When we get to the issues of what should we do going forward, I would like to come back to the TRC and whether, for instance, were we not supposed to have something called, it doesn't have to be called that, but something around that called the Institute, the TRC Institute, that helps us to take charge of the things the TRC was talking about, Deputy Minister?
Well, the TRC, I think, helped us at a very difficult time when people were in pain, trying to find their family members, trying to look for those who disappeared so as to bury them in a dignified way, dealing with torture, those who were tortured, integrating families, other people having been in prison for too many years. And I think the conversations that took place were very, very helpful at the time, especially establishing creating dialogues between the victims and perpetrators. But having said that, as the special hearings were meant to trigger off societal dialogues, that's why we had the faith hearings, hearings with the judiciary, educational institutions and so on. The thinking then was that we will have to work hard as social groupings in society to dismantle all the apartheid empires. Remember, the political vote had nothing to do with the empires that had been consolidated over many years. And the churches, they know there are recommendations, there are things that they had to work on. The private sector, there were hearings on business, by business and labor, also clearly spelling out what needed to be done so as to ensure that we deal with the question of the distribution of wealth. And here we are now in 2016. We're still talking about the situation where in different sectors, a sector is controllable. If you are committed in making a difference, it's possible to provide leadership and show that there's transformation, there's equal beneficiation, it's inclusive, it dignifies the life for all. So I think what we did earlier on was important, critical is valued, but collusion in silence is dangerous because you create a situation where you invite people who fight rather than negotiate.
Well, the Deputy Minister reminds me there of that quote that says they came from the trade unionists. I didn't say nothing because I was not a trade unionist. They came from the communists. I didn't say nothing because I was not a communist. And if you want, let's take a break now, and when we come back, would like you to join us in today's discussion. 011-714-5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Rights and Recourse, or email us with your thoughts and many other topics you'd like us to discuss here at Rights and Recourse at SABC.co.za. Stay with us.
Media Monitor, your weekly media news review program.
It was squashed some few months back, but obviously this is something that is going to hang around Pravin until it is actually dealt with. If he didn't know, then he wasn't doing his job.
In it, she described how the man's hair was frozen, although the man has no hair.
Is anybody volunteering to go to jail for him? That is not how the law works.
This particular matter makes us really look like a serious banana republic.
Unpacking headlines and giving analysis on topical issues. Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News channel.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion on the race issue or hate speech issue and how can we come out of it as human beings. The question I want to ask, first of all, is sometimes we react to these provocations in the same manner of making ourselves guilty of hate speech. We've seen that happening during the week. And that is often overlooked. The various responses to all of these emails or Twitters and Facebook postings.
I think it's a testament to the fact that we're a wounded society. Very wounded, all sides. And that's a woundedness we need to deal with. That's why we need healing. We haven't done that. And so the reaction that you get makes matters worse. And I think we need to acknowledge the woundedness and deal with it. What is not happening is action that makes a difference. And so all of us join up in the flare-up justification of this and that. I mean, for example, a very important organization like the De Klerk Foundation joins the fray to say these reactions are racist. Truly. But actually it would have been so much better if the same foundation had taken up the first issues, because then the voice would have been much more credible at the latter end. But when it comes at the latter end, in the name of the last president of the apartheid regime, it almost says nothing has moved as far as they are concerned from that. And it's unfortunate because I don't think that is the case. But all these then lead to perceptions and perceptions.
Sheniece, why does it take the FW de Klerk Foundation to raise this issue and say we are going to take these issues forward to the Human Rights Commission? What's happened to the Human Rights Commission?
I mean, I think that they're still
Well, we've been trying to get hold of them for this discussion.
No, and I think that they have been making comments. I think in a few of the pieces I've read, they have been commenting on the situation. And obviously, we've noted that they've received several complaints, so it'll be interesting to
Well, not several. They received about 3,000 complaints, 3,590 complaints.
Okay, that's quite a bit. But it'll be interesting to see what they do follow up with this on. I mean, and I think that's also one of the things that we, in the social cohesion and the work that we need to go forward, the Human Rights Commission is an organization well placed to take the lead, if not play a very large role in that process of dialogues and trying to get down to the deeper issue on the racism issue. But I think that they have commented on, like I said, on a few pieces, and it'll be interesting to see how it develops if they actually bring a charge.
Deputy Minister, I was wondering, I bumped into something called the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, more precisely called the Equality Act. What happened to this act? Do people know that there's something like this?
Can I quickly chip in?
Oh, no, you can.
Yeah, with regard to the Human Rights Commission, I think, these Section 9 institutions, they are over-controlled. They have to go through systems, they analyze and they agree how to approach it. I don't think they can keep up with the flame as free, independent people can. The Equality Court. I remember at one time I spoke to one of the judges when it was still new. He said, we've had the first 3 cases, but really people are not coming forward. I still think the answer is not in a court of law, because it's important to ensure that we have legislation to deal with such issues. But if you look at the massive nature of the problem, I think we need to create systematic interventions which will really make sure that we deal with it in a preventative manner and dealing with emerging problems and also providing leadership on a long term.
Deputy Minister, I'll give you an opportunity to finish that discussion. Yeah. We have Makabongo on the line from Johannesburg. Makabongo, good afternoon and welcome to our office.
Yes, afternoon, Director Miller. I would like the professor specifically to help me here. This issue of race, can she really maybe indicate that really as black people, really we can't be racist? That's number one. And secondly, I think we are dealing with a bigger issue here of the societal issue, because I believe it's not only white people and black people, because even amongst us blacks, as I'm a Xhosa, someone can be paid and all those things. I'm living in Gauteng, but we're dealing with issues where if you address one another, there are times where things tend to show that really that we are not united as we should be or we wish to be. So this issue of race, maybe, if it cannot be dealt at that level of politically only, but also to try by all means to unite societies, make them to understand, so that we're not only responding with emotion in these issues as the current state of the nation is now, because we are responding emotionally now because we only base it that it's white people against black, but there's a long way to go. There's more that can be done. If they can help me on this issue of race, that black people, can they be racist or not? If they can clarify that matter, maybe we'll understand it better as well.
Well, Magabongwe there is touching on tribalism. When we come back from the break, I'll give my panelists an opportunity to respond to Malbonga's question, because I've heard many people during the week say black people cannot be racist. I wonder if that is the case. Don't go away. Stay with us.
All the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
We live in a digital era, and the number of Africans with mobile phones is rapidly increasing.
Twitter use is predominantly being done on smartphones. This is a very African phenomenon.
Here, there are constantly new innovative ways to make the internet more affordable. With that, we're seeing protests against governments proposing methods to limit access. On Network, we give you information about all of this. We also have new computers, games and robots.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. Let's take this call quickly from Zale in Mpumalanga. Zale, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon. I also want to add my voice on the issue of a wounded nation. I want to agree with the Bishop that we are a wounded nation. After the TRC, I don't think there were interventions that were done to assist us as South Africans. We needed psychological support. You know, courts are not the place to resolve these issues. But I feel that if there can be NGOs that are established to provide us with psychological support so that we understand the situation. At the moment, we hate each other and we are still bitter. And the Deputy Minister is correct. We need programmatic actions to assist ourselves. Therefore, I want to urge government to work with these Chapter 9 institutions and come up with those programs that will assist us psychologically. And this thing will assist us and also our children going forward. We don't like each other. We have to love each other. And for us to do that, we have to start now and see each other as human beings as brothers and sisters.
Thank you very much, Zala. Zala, there are now two questions. There are now two issues. What Magabongo raised and what Zala raised. Probably you should divide that amongst yourselves.
What did Magabongo raise? That can black people be?
Malbongo said, can black people be racist?
I think in the context of the discussion, when we saw all sorts of reactions to what was said about black people who went to the beach or the beaches around Durban. I'm not going to repeat that. So there was a reaction. So the victim's anger, sometimes we have to be careful. You don't, if for instance a woman has been assaulted and women react, they say all sorts of things, they expose their bodies, they are expressing anger. Racism is about consolidating power and creating a machinery to achieve certain objectives. So there was anger of people who saw themselves as having been assaulted, their integrity, human dignity that Bishop Mpulwana is talking about. So they reacted in a particular way, which we don't really, people are free to express their anger.
Should we call that racism?
It's not. It's a racism.
Part of it was crude.
Racism is about consolidating power and creating a machinery to ensure that we can judge it against the values of the Constitution, what Bishop Mpulwana was talking about. That does it stand a test in terms of human dignity, being in defense of freedom of expression, and so on. So that's a different topic, but it was just black rage. It wasn't really racism.
Bishop and Sheniece, probably you can share this one. Zala said, yes, we are a wounded nation. After the TRC, we needed intervention. We needed psychological support. And that, for me, is what I was speaking about earlier. That is what is missing.
Yes, indeed. There is a beautiful study that I really want to refer to because for me it speaks to the issues we're talking about. That's been conducted for the South African Council of Churches by the Institute of Justice and Reconciliation, which talks about the challenges, of all sides. And it's manifest also in the fact that, and we didn't know this for some time until recently, how traumatized those 18-year-old conscripts of apartheid still are in their 60s. They used to come shoot in the townships, and change happened in 1994. Nobody went to them to say what's going on. And as kids, they were made to shoot and indoctrinated to kill black people. So some of them are still exactly where they were because they were indoctrinated for this. Every male, white male South African was indoctrinated to be a killer of black people. And there never was any reformation of this apart from the laws that are there. And so that is also part of the woundedness. And as we speak today, the SABC is working with an organization of the former conscripts together with the June the 16th generation to work towards some kind of programs that deal with this. But that's just a small little micro, it just generates, it tells what the problem is. And the IJRS then pointed this out to us that actually you can use the metaphor of a tree, that the tree has got roots, it's got a trunk, it's got fruits. All these flare-ups, whether it is xenophobia or racism, these are flare-ups or tribalism, whatever it is, conflicts are only just fruits. But where do they come from? They're fed by the nutrients of these things that are at the bottom. Ideology, belief systems, values, all these things that are nurtured and built in our homes, around our beer rooms, our braais, our kitchen tables, and we are building this and breeding it, and nobody is dealing with it because it's not visible. And then, of course, our systems of power that the minister was talking about, maintain and sustain this. Then, of course, you see the fruits, whether it is rape against women or anything. Patriarchy is at the bottom. Systems that say women must be this side and men this side, men must be powerful. And, of course, ultimately, we see the rape and the violation. So we need to deal with the roots at the bottom. And that's what the program that we are talking about is supposed to deal with, because it's a socialization issue
Well, when we come back, we'll deal with issues around social cohesion. So many people believe that's where our salvation will be. We've got to bring the various tribes or nations or societies together in South Africa. If you'd like to join us, you can still call us on 011-794 5497 or 5498. Stay with us.
AKA went overseas to win 2 awards for himself for Best South African Male Artist and a second one for his hit track All Eyes on Me. The Lamb film is nominated for Best Foreign category at the 2016 Oscars.
We couldn't find finance until the script won a very prestigious prize in France.
Dr. Pascal has inspired many in song and theatre presentation.
In 1985 when I came, I went to the SABC on the radio and I was the voice of Africa.
Catch Trends every Friday at 9 p.m.
Well, when we come back, we thought we were going to talk about social cohesion, but let's take this last call on the line. Good afternoon, and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
James okhulumayo baba.
Yebo.
Yebo. Nithi mina right isiparo sibizile baba ngemfene. Yena mayizibuka yena ubukeka afana nani ngoba thina sifana nemfene. Mangibuka mina naye udalwe uNkulunkulu. Nathi sidalwe uNkulunkulu asibunjwanga ngabelungu. Nathi abantu abamnyama naye abamhlophe ababunjwanga ngumuntu omnyama. Sonke sidalwe uNkulunkulu oyi-one. Manje lasa ngithi mina i-ANC mayiqiqinise lento lingabuyele emuva ukuthi umuntu ma abiza omunye ngale gama aboshwa ecourt ba.
Siyabonga mhlakazi wami. I think we heard what the caller was saying, but I want to come to something else. A couple of years ago, there was a social cohesion program that was driven by the Department of Arts and Culture. The question is, should organizations like the SACC and other church organizations not lead this kind of program with the support from government?
Well, we have launched a program called the South Africa We Pray For. We launched this deliberately on the 16th of December, the Day of Reconciliation, precisely because we think that healing and reconciliation, there will be no nation building without healing and reconciliation. And in fact, we have been in conversation with the Department of Arts and Culture. We'll have another meeting this coming week on the relationship between what we are saying and what they are doing in the nation building agenda. And in our view, this is why I keep talking about socialization. We need to create and use spaces of education. Early childhood development must deal with these issues. Our classrooms, there must be a way in which there's something of a South African education. What does it mean to be a citizen of this country as a diverse society that has got different races and will always, because of the nature of our economy, which was built on the backs of labor from other countries actually, will always have an influx of people from other countries. What does that mean in terms of living together? And then of course our churches, which are the places that in every ward you've got 15, 20 churches. You've got lots of space there to do the kind of thing we're talking about in terms of socialization. So we need to build those institutions. Ultimately, the radio and the television. You remember what we did in 2010? We were flooded with education on the World Cup. Why can't we do the same on a regular basis? Even the radio morning, every morning there's prayer. I wish we could also, not only the prayer, but also have another 5 minutes that just talks about what it is to be a good citizen in this country. And I think that we can do those things. So there are things we can do. Let's create the spaces and have the dialogue.
Deputy Minister.
Yeah, just a quick one. I think there are immediate things we can all do, and there are long-term things that the Bishop is talking to socialize our children differently, to invest in different values so that we say within a decade the next one will be where. But the immediate things, you know, a lot has been said about loving one another. I think South Africans ought to commit, for instance, in the neighborhoods where you find black and white people, to stop racism, like to let certain values dominate, that you shouldn't slaughter here or you shouldn't be too many. And I mean, that's racist because it's allowing specific values to dominate. But we can do that immediately. Love one another, care, get to know each other, have a barbecue together along the street. That's immediate. And also, even in the economy, it's not a government program to implement things like the inclusion of those who were left outside the BE. It's up to established economic powers to create economic hubs so that they inspire and give hope to young people that I can be there in my lifetime and get what everybody gets.
Deputy Minister, Bishop and Sheniece. Sheniece will spend some time to talk about the Freedom of Expression Institute one day. It's a pity we've run out of time. This program is repeated at 5 on Monday morning. Do find us on Twitter and on YouTube. From all of us here in the studio and the rest of the team, thank you to our guests and goodbye.
News is Newsroom.
We also stream live on YouTube.
Whether you're at home, at the office or at the gym, wherever you are, Newsroom is right there with you. Bringing you all the latest news, updates, sports, weather and everything in between. Get all the latest news you need on the go via live streaming on our YouTube channel. That's Newsroom, weekdays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
South Africa is the third leading country globally in TB infections.
We have 9 million new cases occurring globally, and 30% of those cases are occurring in the African region.
And there are two broad kinds of drug-resistant TB, so to speak. The one is MDR TB, and the other is XDR TB.
To ensure that everyone who's diagnosed with TB is tested for HIV.
There's grossly inadequate funding for TB. Vaccine, drug and diagnostic research. We need a lot more.
Join me on Health Talk every Saturday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. as we unpack current health stories.
Vera Ephraim defied family and traditions to follow her dream.
Decided that I'm going to prove to them that they were wrong.
The first breakthrough came in when she was studying and touring in Europe.
That was my first breakthrough.
Generations was her first television debut in South Africa.
It was my first gig. I was very excited. I was very happy. I said, yeah, this is confirmation I'm at the right place.
After pain, rejection and suffering, her dream became a reality.
I followed my path and I'm happy, I'm grateful, I'm blessed.
Join your host, Wileng Mulabati, on Wupilong every Friday at 17:30.
We live in a digital era, and the number of Africans with mobile phones is rapidly increasing.
Twitter use is predominantly being done on smartphones. This is a very African phenomenon.
Here, there are constantly new innovative ways to make the internet more affordable. With that, we're seeing protests against governments proposing methods to limit access. On Network, we give you information about all of this. We also have new computers, games and robots.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.